fight fans? UFC 291 is just around the corner. It is this Saturday, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about this fight card. It is so stacked from top to bottom. It's going to be a very exciting night of fights, and we are going to talk about it. I'm going to break it down to you guys. Let's get started. We got the Cole prelim main event, Derrick Lewis versus Marcos de Lima. It's a very must-win, I say, for Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis has fallen on some hard times. He has already lost, I want to say, 3 of his last 4. You know, he's actually on a 3-in-a-row skid right now. Derrick Lewis has basically fallen from grace, I guess you could say, because he has fought the who's who in the heavyweight division. Guys like Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blades, Daniel Cormier, Cyril Gane. The list goes on and on about the guys that Derrick Lewis has actually fought, even fighting for the championship twice. Of course, not really going his way. In his last 3 fights, he's fought guys like Tai Tuivasa, Spivak, and Pavlovich, if I'm correct. So this is definitely a must-win for Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis really needs to get a victory if he wants to stay in possible title contention. If he loses, well, it's going to be very unfortunate for Derrick Lewis because I don't necessarily see him fighting for the championship as the fight continues, or his fight career continues, I should say. Because it's just, if you can't get past this opponent, no disrespect to his opponent, but I feel like Derrick Lewis has fought a lot more highly ranked opponents than his current opponent now. So it's going to say a lot if Derrick Lewis cannot get past his opponent, which is Marcos. And Marcos, this is definitely a good step up for him. You know, he has fought a few guys here and there, nothing really that's going to blow your hair back. But he has actually fought guys like Ben Rothwell and Andrei Arlovski, where, yeah, maybe back in the day, these guys were like something big, super. Of course, Andrei Arlovski, Ben Rothwell. But they're a little past their prime, obviously. You know, it's been quite some time in the game for these opponents. So this is definitely a good step up for him. You know, for him to actually take on a more currently ranked opponent, it's a good step up in the right direction for Marcos, you know, for him to possibly go down the line, take on other opponents and head towards that championship fight one day down the line. So good step up for him, and Derrick Lewis definitely needs a win in this fight for sure. On the opener of the main card, you got Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, obviously we know he is a big superstar. He definitely has been fighting a lot. He's the type of guy that would literally fight anybody at any time. You remember he took on that fight short notice with Khamzat Chimaev, and unfortunately it did not go his way. But we already know what happened. It was a big mess. You know, he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz, blah, 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 blah. We could talk about all that day. Then you got that fight that he had, that great fight, that fight of the year contention fight with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, unfortunately, again, that did not go his way, but I remember correctly, they had some kind of gentleman's agreement that there was going to be no takedowns, and I believe Kevin Holland ended up breaking his wrist or his hand or something like to that nature. But still a great fight. Unfortunately, did not go his way again. But he did end up getting a knockout over Ponzinibbio, if I'm correct. So he's somewhat in there still. And fighting someone like Michael Chiesa is actually a good step in the right direction for him, especially if he wants to continue to try his best to be in title contention one day in the welterweight division. Where Michael Chiesa, there was a lot of high hopes for him. You know, there was a lot of high hopes for him. He actually is one, a lot of people considered a dark horse within the division. You know, a lot of people thought that he possibly could even challenge for the championship one day. But he's had a bit of an on and off career, I guess you could say, where he's had some really great victories over guys like former champions Rafael dos Anjos, but unfortunately in his recent outings, he wasn't able to get past guys like Sean Brady or I want to say Vicente Luque, if I'm correct. But with that being said, he's still somewhat there. He has his lights are not completely out yet. You know, his career ain't completely over with yet, so he can still potentially get there down the line. So fighting Kevin Holland is actually a really good step in the right direction if he wants to continue trying to get into title contention. Because those 2 losses, they don't say a lot, but they do. You know, because Sean Brady isn't necessarily a future world champion right now, but he could possibly be down the line. Vicente Luque, a little bit same thing. He's had some careers up and down and such. So it's a little bit up there. It's a little bit up there. So it can definitely be. It could say a lot if he ends up losing to someone like Kevin Holland or winning. It really all remains to be seen. But definitely these two guys need a win over each other in order to continue to be in that title contention down the line, for sure. On the next one, you got Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. Oh, God, what can we say about Tony Ferguson? I mean, this guy was literally, I believe, what was it, like on a 9-fight winning streak? 9 fight, maybe 9, maybe 10 fights, something like that. 8, 9, 10, around there. But he was literally on top of the world. And we remember that fight that he was supposed to have with Habib. We wanted it so much. It did not fall. It wasn't in the cards. I believe it was trying to make 4 or 5 times. It is what it is. And now here we are talking about Tony Ferguson losing 5 in a row, I believe. Guys like Nate Diaz, Justin Gaethje, Benil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler. I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate from Tony Ferguson's point of view, but he's still in it somewhat. Not necessarily in title contention, that's for sure. That's for sure, but he still has a fight career. It's not completely over with yet, but the window's closing. That door is kind of closing little by little. It's starting to sneakily be like, hey, it almost might be time to call it a day. And what happens in this fight will say a lot about Tony Ferguson's career. If he just so happens to not get past Bobby Green, I do strongly feel that El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson's career is done. That's it. It is time to call it a day. You just can't do it no more. You can't do it no more. It's very unfortunate. But if he just so happens to beat Bobby Green, I feel like he's got thrown a life raft. Like, okay, maybe there's still some life in there, but let's take it slow. Let's not right away throw you to the sharks. Top 5. Let's take it easy in there. Let's start going, not even top 10 almost. Let's start working your way slowly to the top again. But it really depends on Tony Ferguson. It really depends on how his training camp is. Was he able to change some things up? Was he able to add some new weapons to his arsenal? It really remains to be seen when it comes to Tony Ferguson. Bobby Green, again, is no punk. I mean, he's, I want to say 0-3 as well. You know, he is he's a very tough fighter. He's a very tough fighter who has fought in tough opponents. We remember he actually was able to step in short notice against Islam. Fortunately, that fight did not go his way. He fought in guys like Gordon and Dober and such like that in tough competitions. Again, those fights didn't necessarily go his way either, but he's still a tough competitor. Now, it's actually a really big name, probably one of the biggest names. I believe he fought Ally Aquina in the earlier days as well, a couple of fights back as well. But if he just happens to get a fight and a win over Tony Ferguson, that's actually a really big name on his resume. And that could potentially lead to other big names down the line as well. So I'm sure Tony Ferguson wants to keep his career alive. And Bobby Green wants to kind of enhance his career. Because I feel like even if he loses, Bobby Green still has something there. You know, Bobby Green could potentially still fight somebody, but maybe nowhere near as big as Tony Ferguson. Or Tony Ferguson, if he loses, I feel like that's it. It's over with. Time to call it a day. That's my personal opinion. Now, moving forward, you got Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson versus Pereira in another welterweight showdown. You got Wonder Boy, who is literally coming off a few victories and whatnot. Well, not a few. He actually has one in his last 3. And he has a victory over guys like actually Kevin Holland, who is actually in the undercard as well. Great fight. Great fight. Can't say that enough. It was a very entertaining fight past December. But he does have a few losses over guys like Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. So, with that being said, going against someone like Pereira, who's actually on a 5-fight winning streak, does necessarily say a lot, but it's actually still good. It's actually still a good way to build up momentum. Where Pereira already has really good momentum, you know, but doesn't necessarily have a super big name on his resume like a Wonder Boy. So, not saying or knocking any of the guys that Pereira has been able to beat over Wonder Boy, but it is a very good step up for him. Wonder Boy, it's a good way to build momentum. You kill this guy's momentum. Now you're starting to build up a little more momentum on yourself. You know, it's not going to get you anywhere close to a title shot, but you're not going to be super far away from it either. Where Pereira, this is actually, or Pereira, excuse me if I'm saying the name wrong, this is actually a really good step up for him and a really big name on his resume, where this could potentially lead even more to a title fight, possibly even a ranked 2 or 3 opponent for sure, because you're already on a 5-5 winning streak. You're able to, if you're able to beat Wonder Boy, then really is no there is no other way than for you to go more forward. You could definitely go towards the ranks of 4, 3, or 2, somewhere around there, or those rankings, and possibly even a title shot not too far from the distant future whatsoever. You're probably 2 fights away if he just so happens to get past Wonder Boy. Well, Wonder Boy still has a little bit more work, but it's definitely a good step in the right direction for sure. In the co-main event, you got Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. Oh my goodness. This is actually going to be a very entertaining fight. This is a very, very high stake fight, I guess you could say as well, because we already know, of course, if you guys are familiar, Jamal Hill ended up dropping the title because I believe he something about his Achilles. I think he ruptured it or tore it, something like that. But now there's a championship out there floating. We all know that Yuri Prochazka is still more likely the champion as well, because he actually dropped the belt last year as well, because I believe he had a messed up shoulder, if I'm correct. So he could not defend the belt either. And of course, we know Jamal Hill was able to get that victory over Glover Teixeira and became champion. So now, with him dropping the belt, if it sounds like they gave the belt back to Yuri Prochazka, and this fight is now for the #1 contendership for a potential matchup with the champion, Yuri Prochazka. Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. Jan Blachowicz was once your former light heavyweight champion of the world, beating Dominic Reyes in a vacant championship bout back in, I want to say, 2020. Was able to beat Israel Adesanya. Then unfortunately loses the belt to Glover Teixeira, who just so happens to be the trainer of Alex Pereira, or one of the trainers. Then he gets a good victory over Rakic, excuse me if I'm saying that name wrong. And then unfortunately he ends up in a draw against Ankalaev. Very unfortunate draw last year. Wasn't the greatest fight, is what it is. So now here we are. He's going to take on Alex Pereira, former middleweight champion of the world. We all know last year he was able to stun the world by stopping Israel Adesanya. Then, unfortunately, losing the fight again in April in the rematch. So now after dropping the belt, he is now making his light heavyweight debut against the former light heavyweight champion and a very bad dude. This is actually going to be a very tough fight for these guys. You know, for Alex Pereira, I feel, because Jan Blachowicz is definitely a beast on the ground. We saw what he was able to do to Izzy. Izzy was, a very great kickboxer and a very good, he had some really good takedown defense in the middleweight. But when it came to the light heavyweight, he just could not stand that Polish power. Jan Blachowicz was just a beast, and he had some highly powerful kicks. We saw what he was able to do to Dominic Reyes. I mean, after a few kicks, Dominic Reyes' body was just getting red and bruised up. It was nasty. But that's not saying Alex Pereira cannot hold his own either, because Alex Pereira has some power, and Alex Pereira is a big dude, a huge guy, massive. Everyone thought he was a little too big for the middleweight division, but here he is now, comfortable, not cutting weight at light heavyweight. So it remains to be seen how he's going to be able to hold up some of Jan Blachowicz' power, and how he's going to be able to handle maybe this new cardio that he has to do, because it's going to, now you're walking around 20 pounds heavier, and that's not no walk in the park. It's going to be a different change, a really big change in the classes. In the light heavyweight to middleweight, it's a big jump, a very big jump. So how this fight's going to go down, I really do not know. If Jan Blachowicz is able to take Alex Pereira, which a lot of people feel like it's going to happen, then it should be a very easy night for Jan Blachowicz. But if Jan Blachowicz decides to test, and not do what he's, really known for, which is a little bit of his wrestling, and pretty much stand up with Alex Pereira, I do not see a reason why Alex Pereira does not knock out Jan Blachowicz. I mean, it could be very possible. Very, very possible. But guys, again, this is for the number one contendership. This is definitely going to be title contention. One of these guys is getting a victory. One of these guys is getting a title shot. One of these guys could be potentially a future light heavyweight champion of the world. So I am rooting for Alex Pereira on this one for sure, because how entertaining that fight would be against Yuri Prochazka. I feel like it would be very entertaining. Very, very entertaining. So that's your co-main event. In the main event, oh, I cannot say or talk about this fight enough. In the main event, you got yourself the BMF title on the line, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. And when the BMF was first fight, it was definitely the right two guys. But this one is also the right two guys. Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, BMF Championship of the World. Oh my God. I cannot talk enough about this fight. I cannot talk enough about these two guys. We know these guys are all action. All action. You cannot name one boring fight with these guys. None of them. These guys has fought everybody. Everybody from the who's who. Everybody. Dustin Poirier has fought in all guys, all comers. Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, obviously, because this is also a rematch. Hello. Michael Chandler. Just literally, I can name so many opponents right now. Same thing with Justin Gaethje. He's fighting guys like Michael Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, Michael Chandler as well. I mean, God, we can talk all day about these guys. The guts that these guys do. These guys literally are so fun to watch. I love watching these guys. Seriously. So when it comes to this fight, I really do not know who necessarily is going to win. It's not like a clear-cut winner. But if I had to pick someone, I would definitely pick Dustin Poirier, because I feel like Dustin has actually gotten a lot better. A lot better. So going into these fights, these guys are one win apiece. You know, you got after, because recently they had a loss. Not very recent, but they both have a loss to Charles Oliveira. And then when they both got their victories, Justin Gaethje got a victory over Fiziev, and Dustin Poirier got a victory over Michael Chandler, which was another great fight. So now, going into this fight, it's about who can actually test each other's will more, who can actually find openings more, who can find each other's weakness more. Like, we can see Justin Gaethje potentially doing some of his leg kicks that he likes to do, those calf kicks. The way he was able to stop Tony Ferguson, and the way he was able to handle a little bit of Khabib. He actually gave Khabib a little bit of problems. And of course, the way he was able to do a little bit to Michael Chandler to stop a little bit of his power and such. So he's actually added that weapon to his arsenal that is very dangerous to a lot of opponents. So I could see him using that, utilizing that against Dustin Poirier, because I think he was actually able to use that against Dustin Poirier in their first fight. But I believe he got that leg kick checked, and that was the beginning of the end for Justin Gaethje. But you never know. Things change. It's been a while. I believe that fight was back in 2018, if I'm correct. So, with that being said, I do not see a reason why Justin Gaethje cannot win. Of course, you know, he has a great trainer in his corner, Trevor Whitman. You know, he is used to this altitude, this high altitude, because he fights in Colorado. You got to remember, UFC 291 is in Utah, which is all elevation, all high altitude up there. You know, they're fighting way up there in the sky, I guess you could say. Where Dustin Poirier, on the other hand, he's fighting over there in Florida and such, sea level. So that definitely does play a big factor. Definitely does play a big factor, but you never know. You never really know what can actually happen, because I'm pretty sure Dustin Poirier knows this, and I'm pretty sure Dustin Poirier has trained for this. Dustin Poirier, again, has a victory over Justin Gaethje. Dustin Poirier has a victory over a few other opponents. Just like Justin Gaethje has victory over a few other opponents. Both of them have a lot of opponents in common, for sure. So with that being said, Dustin Poirier, I feel like, has had a lot of better boxing and a lot of better grappling experience as well. He's been able to stop a lot more opponents. You know, where he was able to stop Conor McGregor in that second fight, where he was able to knock them out. He was able to submit Michael Chandler after, you know, having one hell of a war with Michael Chandler, and being able to stop some of his wrestling and utilize some of his grappling. So it's going to be a very highly contested, a very big war for this fight, for sure. These guys are going to go to war with each other. Literally. These guys are going to share an ambulance, share a hospital's rooms, and it's gonna be talked about for years and years to come. BMF title: Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. It's gonna be a great fight, guys. Do not miss it. Who do I think is gonna win? I would definitely give the edge to Dustin Poirier because I feel like he has grown so much from that fight and been able to utilize so much more of his grappling, and definitely has some crisp boxing. Where I feel like Justin Gaethje, it almost feels like he definitely throws haymakers and just goes for power shots when things don't quite go his way, or when the heat's turning up. I don't feel like he utilizes his wrestling enough. Where Dustin Poirier will utilize it. He'll utilize some of his grappling. He will take you down to the ground. So it's definitely, these guys gotten better, a lot better since the earlier days, since when they fought last. But I do feel like Dustin Poirier is just a little bit more better, just a little bit. But you never know, guys. UFC 291 this Saturday. I cannot wait. Do not miss it, guys. Let me know what you guys think about the fight card. Let me know what you guys think is going to win, or who's going to win. Let me know what's going to happen to these guys, or how they're going to win. Oh my God, there's just so much to go through. Just let me know, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.